Senior Chief Patrol Rank. Good morning. Well, this morning was marked by record intensity, with Russia attacking Kyiv and some other cities in Ukraine. This attack was so powerful that the subway ceiling collapsed. And that's not just talk. Let's take a look at what happened here. At the time of recording this video, the information about the incidents is still fragmentary. There are a few photos, a few videos, but there is no complete objective picture of the situation yet. That's why I'm telling you what I have, and if you have any additional information, please send it to the email address in the channel description. People are hiding in the subway because there aren't enough shelters, enough bomb shelters. And why weren't they built? Well, apparently that's the answer. And here, let's take a look at what actually happened. First of all, more than 40 ballistic missiles were launched at Ukraine, which is a record number for the entire war. And naturally, such a number of missiles, the amount of weaponry that was directed against Ukraine, could not help but cause a huge amount of destruction. It all started at around 8 o'clock Kyiv time, when the Air Force reported that a jet-powered Shahed drone was flying from the north toward Chernihiv. And that would have been one thing, but it turned out that it wasn't just a jet-powered Shahed drone, and it wasn't just heading for Chernihiv. That's why, just 10 minutes later, an air raid alert was declared in Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia regions, as well as in Novhorod-Siversky district, and in Shostka, Romny, and Sumy districts. In general, in many districts, you can check for yourself, including Kupiansk, Lozova, and Izium districts of Kharkiv region, and that's still before reaching Kyiv. Then the military forces reported that a Shahed was heading toward Zaporizhzhia, then toward other cities, and then more and more Shaheds started flying toward the southern direction and Zaporizhzhia region. You see more and more of them. Red regions to Nikopol district, Dnipropetrovsk region, Sumy region, they kept going, and then the strikes started, very powerful strikes. That's what happened afterward, and here 2 warehouses are burning. There are a lot of photos here, a lot of fires. There are even more serious things that happened later on. But obviously, if missiles and drones are flying, nothing good can come of it. An hour later, there were already 2 fires in Zaporizhzhia, then Kharkiv region was attacked, and then residents of Kharkiv were urged to stay in shelters. An air raid alert was declared in Donetsk region, in Zaporizhzhia, in Sinelnikivsky district of Dnipropetrovsk region, and in Sumy and Kharkiv regions. The alert was cancelled, but then everything started flying again, and once more an air raid alert was declared. But this time not only in Zaporizhzhia and Kharkiv district, but also in Konotop district of Sumy region. Shaheds flew towards Zaporizhzhia from the south, and there were explosions in Odessa. Then drones headed for Odessa from the Black Sea waters. The head of Zaporizhzhia started reporting problems, and there were already casualties, injuries, and much more. That was just the beginning. Then explosions followed both in the air and on the ground. And the worst part is that, just like Zelensky used to say as the leader of the nation, that we have some purpose to fly, and they are flying, and we will bomb everyone. There aren't enough resources, that's clear. Why didn't they take care of it? Yes, it's really impossible to understand. Just like in the past, officials usually couldn't prepare for snowfalls in winter, for slush, and they would just shrug and say, you know, so much snow just fell, something like that. There's a war and no air defense. Oh, Anders is being bombed and we lack resources. Naturally, people are dying, things are being destroyed, a huge number of things are ruined, including what can be called critically important facilities in various industrial sectors. And here, look, everything is almost red now. If before this I showed you just a few red regions, now literally half of Ukraine is already red. And here the problem is the Zircon strikes. Zircons are anti-ship hypersonic cruise missiles that have been adapted for strikes on ground targets. They are capable of reaching speeds up to 10,000 kilometers per hour. This is such an enormous speed that it's basically hard to imagine. They attack along a ballistic trajectory which makes them difficult to intercept. Well, especially if, as Zelensky reported, there is no air defense at all, then again a lot of questions arise. Why? We've already asked about this. Missile strike threats lasted over 30 minutes and precautions proved necessary. Explosions were heard in Kyiv as Russia attacked with ballistic missiles. So it was really intense here, and at the time of recording this video it's still going on. I'll record an additional update later, but for now. At 1:21, the Air Force warned about the launch of ballistic missiles from the Bryansk region. Explosions were heard in Kyiv, and then at 1:41, the mayor of the capital reported the first consequences of the attack. In the Desnyansky district, smoke was rising near one of the shopping centers, and at another address, cars were on fire. And again, it all started. The consequences are simply countless. But what we have is what is known at the time of recording this video. The main thing is that residential buildings are being damaged, commercial centers are being hit, cars are burning, and people are dying. Here, residents and guests of the capital are being urged to stay in shelters until the air raid is over. Well, until the air raid is over. If not only plaster but also pieces of concrete are falling from the ceiling in the subway, you can imagine the force of impact of these missiles. And how can anyone even hide there? I mean, what other shelters could there be in Zaporizhzhia? I showed these photos, but it turned out that several people were killed or injured. Then a fire broke out. A lot happened, and yeah, this is the US. We'll get to that a bit later. Basically, nothing good happened. I don't have the video at the moment, it's still being prepared, but I'll upload it later, put it on TikTok and Instagram, so make sure to subscribe. All the links are in the description. By morning there will be up-to-date information about everything that happened, and a lot has happened. Ukraine, you could say, is really being destroyed, and Kyiv is the only real decision-making center. It's kind of strange, but it's clearly not Nova Poshta. It's definitely not some garages or cars. But anyway, let's see what happens in the foreseeable future. Now let's move on to the second part. This is about the USA. So here Russia and Ukraine are fighting, and here the USA and Iran have started a war again. As if there wasn't enough trouble already, but as we know, trouble never comes alone, it always brings more with it. In the USA, they're saying that soldiers are dying, people are dying for money, so to speak. But the memorandum of understanding between the USA and Iran has been broken. It originally extended the truce between the countries and opened the way for negotiations on key issues. But in the first half of July, Iran attacked one of the container ships. And then it all started again, so to speak. Now the situation in the Strait of Hormuz has become very tense. The US has been striking Iranian military targets for the 7th night in a row. Tehran is responding with strikes on Kuwait and Bahrain, and experts fear that the region is sliding into a full-scale war. But it can't really be a full-scale war. For now, most likely it won't. Ground forces have been deployed there, the same US forces of course, and Iranian forces are already present there. Well, but what's happening now is really intense. The conflict is already getting out of control. They're telling us that it might get out of control, but it's already happening. It's already out of control. Strikes on bridges, casualties among civilians, casualties among, of course, the military. And for some reason, the American military doesn't specify where they're directing the strikes. The Iranian TV channel reported explosions in the Sirik area, but we don't really know where that is. But in general, bridges are being attacked, and in one of the cities. Verano. They are basically responsible for all the military infrastructure, and it has a strong impact on the control of the Hormuz Strait. According to the Americans, with indirect confirmation from Iran, it has been isolated precisely because the bridges there were destroyed, the roads were destroyed, and all of this is currently under US control, so right now Iran cannot have a strong influence on the Hormuz Strait, again according to the US. Whether this is true or not, we will find out. This morning, July 18, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced that a combined missile and drone operation stopped 4 vessels in the Hormuz Strait. In addition, according to the same corps, 2 oil tankers hit mines and exploded in the strait, for which Tehran also placed responsibility on the US. 2 oil tankers that tried to pass through the minefield in the southern part of the Hormuz Strait after being misled by American intelligence exploded and caught fire. Tehran is threatening us with a phase of offensive operations. But what kind of offensive operation could there be if there are no ground forces yet? Maybe they are planning to attack neighboring countries. So far, things are still a bit unclear here as well. Are the advisors saying anything about this? At the stage of comprehensive offensive and destructive operations, the American military is attacking an increasingly wide range of targets in Iran and deploying fighter jets. Other portals are also sharing a variety of information here. In short, as a result of all this, shipping in the Strait has almost come to a halt after the resumption of these attacks. There's no movement back and forth, no tankers, no traffic. As a result, oil prices are rising. Crazy price hikes will start soon for food, groceries, and everything else. When logistics costs rise, the goods themselves get pricier, causing everything else to become more expensive quickly. But there is an interesting nuance. The USA made an agreement with the UAE and offered them an option for uranium enrichment. So it turns out that in one of the countries, uranium ended up there. The Trump administration initially agreed to allow Saudi Arabia to enrich uranium without standard international safeguards. So they bypassed the IAEA, they bypassed those same international safeguards. And the draft agreement is still awaiting approval from the White House, but there's no doubt that everything will be fine. All this was completed back in October of 25 with approval, then it dragged on, but now it's all come out again, and the Trump administration briefed some members of Congress on the main provisions of the agreement. There. With that, he gained a certain level of capability for domestic uranium enrichment and/or plutonium reprocessing. But we had already come more than once, more than twice. Remember, the same thing happened in Afghanistan when the US armed those very mujahideen, meaning the opponents of the Soviet Afghan regime. And what did that lead to in the end? But we all see what that has led to now. And back then they didn't just arm them with all sorts of grenade launchers and the latest developments. Now suddenly they've armed people with uranium, plutonium, that is, enrichment technologies. In my opinion, this won't lead to anything good, and it won't take decades to develop. It will start to show itself literally in just a few months. If he does something like that, in my opinion, what more noise does he need? Suddenly, Germany on the one hand is kind of full of water here. The head of the German Foreign Ministry called the idea of exempting aid to Ukraine from the debt brake reasonable. That is, to provide everything they want, including in fact Germany's own defense expenses. And then to cut the budget, cut the development budget, but that's great, so there's no development budget. But that's true, right? On the other hand, in Germany, Alice Weidel, the co-chair of the party, spoke out in favor of stopping aid to Ukraine. She said that the party supports peace negotiations. But by the way, I want to remind those who are in favor as well. Honestly, since I'm not in Germany, I don't really have a strong opinion on this. Whether it's good or bad, what she's saying sounds pretty much the same as what Zelensky said. Promises to end the war, eliminate corruption, improve people's lives, and many other things. Saying you'll get married isn't the same as actually doing it. And what she's saying now, like we'll do this and that, you could call that populism. It would be nice, of course, if politicians actually did what they promised, but I don't have much hope for that. So write in the comments what you think about this. Maybe she has already achieved something being part of the establishment again? Not exactly the authorities, but at least those forces that influence the power structures, the ones close to the authorities. But in general, write in the comments what you think about this. I would be glad to be wrong. And what else suddenly ended up in the video too was quite something. The leaders appeared in the video, either about blocking detachments or something like that. In general, some kind of TV evil. They talk about how in 2022, together with his brigade, not behind Hinnom but with a squad of 500 people, he motivated the territorial fighters, those very soldiers. Honestly, I'm not sure what motivating in wartime means, but let's see, because it sounds really cringeworthy.
I'm interested in a specific moment when you were still with the Territorial Defense Special Operations Forces, Azov. As far as I know, in 2022 you were still taking part in combat operations in the Zaporizhzhia sector. There's very little information about this in the media. Can you say what you were doing there?
Motivational troops?
What's that? Honestly, I've never heard of it before. There are two assumptions. The first is that the Azov fighters, as heroes, were some kind of super soldiers. handsome, strong, and set an example by jumping out of trenches with weapons in hand, charging straight at the enemy. And the second is that they didn't let those who didn't want to fight refuse to fight. So there are two different ideas here. Write in, especially if you were a witness, both by email and just in the comments. Tell us what motivational troops means, because you have to admit it sounds really strange.
Back then, we were the motivational troops. We were helping the 110th Territorial Defense Brigade at that time. I can't say anything bad about them because as territorial defense troops, they fought pretty well. But again, as territorial defense troops, they still needed to be motivated even back then.
Well, that's really strange, of course.
A little digression.
My unit, I was the commander of the unit at that time. Yes, there were about 500 people in that unit. We evenly distributed them along the line over a 25-kilometer strip, starting from, if you look at the map, people can see it. It stretches from Malinivka to Velika Novosilka.
Very strange, very suspicious. In general, write what you think about this, because I want to figure out what motivational troops are in general. What is it? What is it about? Huh? Then there's another video of that guy who, by the way, looks like that forest guy. I think his name is Fedorov, not the one who was the minister, ex-minister of defense, but the other one. So, another barbershop pretty boy with a fancy haircut showed up, you know, to get bangs like that. I used to have them once, not anymore for obvious reasons, but when I did, you had to maintain them. And just imagine this guy crawling through a trench. Who are you even taking? Why? What's going on? So they're pulling some guys out of nowhere, putting them in uniform and telling them, "Today you're a big, handsome soldier. Go ahead and tell us what to do." But what kind of soldiers are these? He just got his eyebrows done and now they've already dragged him out into the spotlight. Listeners and viewers, subtitles.
Who are these people? What training, skills, and knowledge should they have?
We're seeing a positive trend in transfers, and people are returning after going AWOL.
And yet another one of the thousands of talking heads who says that people are returning after going AWOL. Unauthorized absence, pure unauthorized. In short, people are fleeing their unit's location. And now more and more of these strange fellows, so-called commanders, are saying that, you see, they come back and start serving again. And they start serving zealously, proving themselves with blood, trying to wash away their guilt. It's unclear, of course. In my opinion, not wanting to die isn't something to be blamed for, but that's just how it is. And this is already, well, the 5th video like this just this week. But in reality, there are dozens of such videos where each talking head vaguely explains, well, besides being unclear, explains why and how someone returns from fleeing.
The talking head returns from, and this is already the 5th week.
Now, I haven't watched this video, but he's probably going to say that drone operators, accountants, that it's not necessarily about assault troops.
That's right, everyone is needed, whether they're support personnel, scouts, or UAV operators.
I see. The journalist already has a rehearsed line ready and immediately asks, so tell me, there's an underlying meaning. The question is like this. This is a loaded question, so to speak, so that the so-called not-quite soldier immediately answers that there's nothing scary about war, and you don't necessarily have to be a real fighter. Well, you can tell that he's probably not storming any tree lines himself. There's another one, well, when Putin was talking about Rurik, they found some character with a complicated expression, and he's talking about the citizens of ancient Rome and ancient Greece. Why, for what reason, it's absolutely impossible to understand.
Who are, well, warriors from ancient society. That is, as a warrior, you have the right to vote and take part in government because you once stood in the phalanx next to other citizens. In general, a citizen.
Not as a citizen, but as citizens. As for the language, again, they trotted out some tongue-tied character who doesn't know the Ukrainian language. And secondly, well, let's do it communally. Communally, that's like gathering hunters. Or to remember who was running around with a stick, a digging tool, and someone else with something else. I wanted to say with a gun, but no, back then it was with a spear, with a flint tip, or a charred tip too. Yeah, probably there were heroes. So let's run around with those flint spears then. There will be heroes too. Why bring up some 1,000-year-old initiatives that Ukraine has absolutely nothing to do with? Well, just to like be part of something, though again, it's not clear what exactly. I mean, it would be one thing if these were ancestors of Ukrainians, but ancient Greeks, ancient Romans, what are you even talking about?
That's someone who defends their polis or state with weapons in hand, for example. Are we basically talking about Roman law now? Roman? Greek?
Yeah, well, let's also remember the slaves then. Yes, slaves, well, like Zelensky said, there's no slavery in Ukraine, but here suddenly they're recalling the city-states where there were slaves. And let's also remember Sparta, where young Spartans hunted slaves to hone their reflexes and, let's say, their courage. In general, something is happening in this country. Where do they find these people? How do they shape them, their opinions? Why do they interview them? That's really the question. That's all for now. Goodbye, everyone.
I remember the skeptics who mentioned coffee in Yalta. We haven't brought coffee there yet, but we're getting closer. In any case, I think we'll find water and brew coffee in Yalta, even though it's often without water now. Brachuk is here promising victory tomorrow, but much work remains before then.